think people come into these spaces thinking like, this is going to solve all my problems and, I'm going to be a new person and done and, whatever that looks like. The seeking of perfection, the seeking of doneness, and it just is not the way healing works, and it's not the way life works.
Welcome to Still In It, 5-MeO DMT Stories. I'm your host, Arthur. Whether you're curious, preparing for your own journey, or reflecting on past experiences, we hope these stories resonate, inform, and inspire. Please enjoy today's episode.
This podcast is brought to you by Enfold, offering the world's most comprehensive 5-MeO DMT program. To learn more, visit enfold.org. That's enfold.org, or click on the link in the show notes.
Today I'm so pleased to be here with a former guest of ours, Ellen Wong. I had the pleasure of joining Ellen on her intensive at one of my first, intensives that I did with Enfold. And so pleased to have you on the podcast today, Ellen. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited. I've been looking so forward to this conversation. And I was really grateful to have you in the room, Arthur, when I first experienced this medicine. And so this feels very just divinely guided to be able to talk to you again. What is it, 5 months?
Yeah, it was April of this year, I believe, April or May?
Yes, absolutely, April.
Great. We were chatting a bit before we hit the record button, and sounded like some things have been happening as they do following an experience like this, and, just with life in general. So, yeah. Well, I'd love to start, Ellen, by asking a simple but maybe not easy question to answer. I would just love to hear, in whatever way you want to respond to this question. Who are you, Ellen Wong?
So I can explain sort of from how I show up in terms of like service and offering. I call myself an entheogenic death companion. And so I am a steward of the sacred mushroom and of Mother Cannabis. And I walk with people, I companion people in these spaces through these thresholds, which I very much believe is a portal between death and rebirth. And so it's been just such an honor for me to step into that kind of work and that kind of role in companioning people. I did do a death doula training last year. And so it was during that training that I started to realize this medicine work is actually death work. And just feeling the sense of both intrigue and as well as just this is where I need to be. This is what feels right in my body. So that's kind of I would say my role as I show up in service on behalf of collective liberation, on behalf of, the earth right now. But, who I am, what I'm realizing, and this is kind of a newer, I think, realization that this year has brought into me. I'm somebody that has always been sort of I've struggled with workaholism. I've struggled with feeling like my purpose is only in what I put out, my productivity, what I do for quote unquote work. And so what I'm really realizing this year, and I think that this medicine journey had a lot to do with it, is just realizing my purpose is just to be me, just to hold this frequency that I hold and is parlayed into what I do for work and what I do for service. But it's also in my relationships. It's also in just me sitting outside, as I did just now, staring up at the mountain and listening to the birds in the morning and just feeling that sense of wonder and gratitude for just being able to be here for this very short time in this body, experiencing this, very physical and material world that we live in. So not to get too heady with that, but that's kind of what I've been reflecting on recently too. I'm just here to be me.
Yeah. Sometimes easier said than done, but a simple realization that can come, especially I think in work with these medicines. And I would love to hear more about kind of how things have been unfolding since your enfolding, so to speak. But do you recall, Ellen, what sort of initially compelled you to or how you found your way to the work that Enfold was doing and eventually end up on an intensive here?
Yeah. So it's really interesting. Like, I'm somebody who very much follows synchronous messages and signals and things like that. I've learned how to kind of pay attention to the world around me and to things that sort of come to me. And so really, I felt called to Bufo maybe even 3 years ago. I can't quite remember exactly what it was about this medicine, but like when you hear about something, even for even a brief moment, and you experience a sort of a visceral reaction within your body, and just like an urge or a nudge into that direction. I think that's what I was feeling when I first heard about this medicine. So that was, I want to say it was like 2019, like it was a while ago. And then it was almost like a series of signs from, whether it's like a friend that I saw on Instagram that was now working with this medicine, or these like really interesting little synchronicities that all felt kind of like okay, this is in your future. I don't know when, I don't know with who, but this is in your future. Mm-hmm. And so fast forward 3 years, forward, I just kind of had that in my back pocket. And then last November, I had this really interesting dream where I was in a white space. I was in like basically a white room, and I knew that I was working with that medicine, and I had no idea what that was, except to know that it just felt like clarity in a sense, clarity and peace, and just feeling like I woke up feeling like, okay, the medicine is calling me now. Like, now is the time. 2024 is the time. So that was November 2023. And then maybe like 2 or 3 days later, I think I was on Instagram. I was kind of, scrolling through, and I follow Modern Psychedelics and Lana. Mm-hmm. And she was talking about her recent experience at Enfold. Mm-hmm. And it was just like kind of like the dots started to kind of align. And so I happened upon, I went to Enfold's website and saw that there was 1 or 2 more spaces that were open for April. And I was specifically choosing April because of the eclipse portal. And I tend to work with those energies. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, I think this needs to happen. And I've realized that in my life, whenever I make decisions, it's not necessarily like a full body, like, yes, I really want to do this. Like, I can't wait. I'm so excited. It's always fear that I kind of feel, a little bit of resistance and like, oh God, do I really need to do this? And so it's a moment of like really fighting with my brain or my ego, like to kind of move through that resistance and just kind of sign up and go for it. And so that's essentially what I did with Enfold. I went for it, and I was like, this time it was kind of this like just a knowing, like, okay, this is the next step on my journey of medicine work, of just even self-discovery. And there's something here for me to receive. And it's interesting because I didn't feel intense fear. It was kind of just this like a decision that had already been made. Like that it wasn't really on me anymore. I just needed to follow through with it.
Fantastic. I think that's a really helpful piece for a lot of people who may be considering this experience in our, dominant culture. There's sort of the Mark Manson perspective where it's like, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a no. And so, yeah, interesting to hear that it sounds like your process around that was different, and yet you still, had the courage and determination to show up even though there was fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're so glad that you did come. So
thank you.
Yeah. How would you describe, your time here overall, and then, potentially, we'll eventually get into as much as you're comfortable sharing about the medicine ceremony itself and anything else you feel called to share about, being at Enfold.
Yeah. I really, really loved the experience from beginning to end. Even before I traveled to Bowen Island, even taking the 20-minute ferry from the mainland over to the island was glorious. Just being kind of embraced by the water and like moving into this space, like that felt very symbolic for me. Like I'm going into this separate island, this separate space to have this experience. everything from, again, before I, like a month or two before I even stepped foot onto Bowen Island, through the entire process there, just felt so nurturing and so aligned with even the way I like to facilitate. And again, it just, everything just added to the sense of like, I'm meant to be here. I feel incredibly comfortable to fully let go here. And it was kind of wild for me to see just the many different synchronicities and similarities that I felt in the entire experience.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'd love to hear, Ellen, you know, as much as you're comfortable sharing and exploring about your medicine ceremony with 5-MeO itself. And yeah, how was that? What did that look and feel like for you?
Yeah. As soon as I stepped into the meditation studio and I saw, you know, the bed there, and I think Austin was smudging around the room, I just felt just a sense of readiness. I was like, okay, there's no fear here. I'm ready to go. I just remember being on the bed. Steve was in front of me holding the pipe. Austin was next to me. You were behind me. And there was just, it's so interesting. There was just peace already. And I think a lot of it has to do with each of your frequencies, the three of you holding that space, and me being there and just kind of anchored by all of you in the room. And then also just the white space that I was in, which I did not connect to my dream until after the meditation, or after the journeys. But Steve, again, was very like handheld, gentle, explained what was going to happen, you know, with the breathing and the taking in of the medicine. And the very first dose being the lightest handshake dose, I remember, you know, breathing in the medicine, Steve starting to count down from 10 down to 1, and I think I might have hit 7 or 6, not even that far. And I was already, you know, Austin helped me to lay down. And then I was just in this space of, I can only describe it as, it was interesting. It was like a flip book where I felt part of myself, my ego, my brain going, oh my God, what is happening right now? And then there was this other part, my spirit, my higher self, my infinite self, I don't know, but going, just relax and allow. And then again, my brain would take over, like, well, hold on, but we need to understand what's happening. And then this other part, no, just let go, just allow. And faster and faster and faster, flipping back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until finally there was almost kind of this like inner explosion, you know, of just letting go and allowing. And that's when I was just in this, like, I was listening to the music, and I believe it was a Juliana Barwick song, Insight, that I had used in my own medicine journeys. But that song now holds such meaning to me, because this was my very first almost like ascendance or transcendence, you know, into this space. And I just saw just beautiful sacred geometry, patterns, colors I've never seen before, almost pastel, crystallized, you know, it's really hard to use words to explain what I was seeing, but just the perfection in these geometrical patterns, this sacred geometry, and then just this profound knowing and almost like a wave of emotion that just overtook me when I realized just what a privilege it is to be here in this body. And I remember saying that through tears, like, oh my God, it's such a privilege to be here. It's such a privilege to be here in this body. I can't believe, you know, and it was overwhelming. And I think that overwhelm, it's like I'm actually feeling emotion coming up as I'm talking about it again. It's love. It's just the purest frequency of love that was flowing through. And just a recognition that like everything is as it needs to be. Everything is as it is, you know, everything just is. And that was the first journey. I remember coming back laughing, like, if this is the handshake dose, I don't know if I need to go any higher. But, you know, like Stephen and Austin, you know, they were like, I think there's some more to explore here. So let's just go up a little bit more. I think after about, 5-10 minutes of just like kind of returning, it was a gentle return, but it was an instant almost return. There was no come down, there was no, I felt my heart being really fast, but there was not any sense of like, I can only compare it with the mushroom and with cannabis where it's like a more gradual, kind of coming back. This was just like, okay, I'm back, So I remember on the second journey up, because I had already had that experience of allowing and letting go and knowing what this was going to feel like, there was a little bit more of a willingness, I think, in my body, a willingness to just to flow, to kind of like fully let go. And again, counting down from 10, I think I got down to 6. And then again, I was just thrown into this beautiful space of just like everything and nothing. It's like a space of pure neutrality. And I felt this sense of neutrality even more than the handshake dose, where I think there was a bit of that resistance that I had to kind of push through or this time it was more instant. I was just in this space, again, the sacred geometry, all these incredible colors. Like it was almost kind of like seeing rainbow frequencies, but not in that sort of like jewel tone, but just all these colors and just feeling peace. And I just remember my body was still, like there was no movement at all. I think my hands were over my heart. I just felt like I was just, like everything and nothing. And realizing, oh, this is what it means to be out of a body. This is what I am. I'm just energy. I'm now part of the cosmos again. I'm just energy where everything and nothing exists. It's like, and then there was like it was like a tiny wave of, as I was starting to come out of this journey, this question arose within me, like, do I prefer this over being here in this body? Do I prefer this space of, I think people use the word bliss often to describe the sense of neutrality and expansiveness. That was the other thing. I was like, oh my gosh, we are so much more expansive than we realize. My energy is so much bigger than I have even consciousness to be able to comprehend. Like it was just so expansive in this space. But as I was coming down, I was feeling like I was actually missing the cathartic heartbreak of that sense of love. It's almost a pain that you feel when your heart breaks open, whether out of joy or sadness, it's love flowing through you and your body feeling through all of its cells and, just this like breaking open. But yeah, it's not a better or worse or anything, but I found it interesting that that's where my mind went to. Like, I think as somebody who walks with people and witnesses shadow coming through a lot and kind of finds that really interesting when I see the shadowy aspects surface. I'm like, okay, no wonder my soul wants to keep on coming back. No wonder there's like this like coming, like, oh, let's feel this again. Let's feel what it feels like to be in a body. Let's feel love in that physical way. So yeah, it was powerful. And so after this, I remember halfway through the second journey up to the words, I'm complete. This is what I came for. I'm complete. Just resounded over and over and over again. So I knew that I didn't need to go again. I knew that was going to be the end for me, at least this time. And so when Steve and Austin were like, are you sure? Are you sure you don't want, there's time? I was like, yeah, I think I'm good. I really do think I'm good. I really believe that was like, I really needed to listen to my body in that moment. And it was good for me to listen to my body in that moment because I experienced a really powerful somatic release the following day. So
yeah, could you tell us more about that? Did that happen during one of the sort of integrative practices that we get up to the day following? Yeah.
So the day following, we started with sauna ceremony, which Austin led us through. And it was beautiful. We received different plant essences, and she guided us in reflecting on different things. And one in particular, I think she asked us the question of like, are we sending love to? Who do we hold in love? Who do we receive love from? And to hold them in our hearts. I'm paraphrasing. I don't think that's exactly what she said, but it made me recall actually a neighbor that I had a pretty sort of intense vitriolic kind of reaction or incident with, and in that moment it's again the tears, and my heart just broke open, and I just held him and thanked him for being a teacher for me, you know. And this is somebody that I've had like a problematic relationship with that has made me feel very unsafe in many occasions, and we live right next door to them. In this moment during this ceremony, I just felt such love for him, and a realization that, you know, he's actually showing me these wounds I hold from when I was much younger, and just a fear that I have with, you know, receiving anger, particularly from adult men. That was a really beautiful realization. And after this sauna ceremony, we were each invited to do a cold plunge, and I asked if I could go first because even more so than the medicine ceremony, this was actually where I held the most fear. I've done a cold plunge before once through a Wim Hof workshop, but it's not my favorite thing. My body definitely is just kind of like, oh God, okay, we gotta do this. So I asked if I can go first, and of course everybody was like very, very gracious, and they, you know, they honored that. So I went out, and you know, Austin was explaining to me that I can hold up to 5 minutes if I wanted to, but, you know, we're going to aim for 2, and that she was going to have her arm, you know, her hand around my arm the whole time. I was pretty ready. I was like, okay, let's just get this over with. Let me just get in there. Let's just do this thing. I'll hold for 2 minutes, and, you know, we'll be out. And so, you know, I went in, of course, you know, it feels like needles stabbing you all through your body, and you're just like, oh my God, like this is so painful. And I think because I had done the Wim Hof workshop before, I knew to just like focus on my exhale and just with my breathwork training. So that's really what I did. I just started to breathe deeply and just really extend my exhale and just breathing out and breathing out and breathing out. And so as she's counting, I'm just feeling into the pain. And yes, the pain kind of lessens a little bit over time, but by no means does it ever disappear. And so by 2 minutes, you know, I was still feeling those little needles, and yet there's a little voice in me that said, just keep going. And it wasn't something that I needed to prove to myself, but it almost kind of felt like I was being guided in some way to just stay in there longer and longer and longer. And so as I think it was somewhere between 4 minutes and 5, my body started to float. And this cold plunge is outside next to the sauna. So throughout the entire 4 days that we were there, it was sunny. It was beautiful outside. The sun was out, and my eyes were closed the entire extent of the cold plunge. She counted to 5 minutes. My body was floating, and I felt like I was literally in this white light again, in this white space, completely surrendered and feeling lighter than I've ever, like I didn't feel like I was in my body anymore. And so after 5 minutes, you know, I got out, I sat on the edge, you know, she was kind of warming me up, and then my body went into this very incredible, intense somatic release. I started shuddering and shaking, and it was uncontrollable. I think I sat there shaking as Austin held me for a good 10 minutes. And just these like just waves and waves of almost like convulsing and shaking. And it may have seemed alarming if somebody was watching me from the outside, but experiencing it, I was never once scared. I think partly because Austin was there with me the whole time, holding me the whole time. And then also partly because I just had a knowing that this is what needed to happen. And I started to laugh going, I'm getting my third journey right now. You know, I think had I maybe decided to do a third journey up, I may have experienced that somatic release with the 5-MeO-DMT, but I think I needed to experience it with the cold plunge for whatever reason. And so after the 10 minutes, she put me in a chair, and I think I shook for another like 10, 15 minutes. Just my body was releasing all the, stuck energy from within the tissue, within the fascia was all being shaken out. All the fear, all the, anything I was holding, things I'm not conscious of. And after the shaking finally subsided, I just sat under the sun, just receiving the sun for the longest time. I think got a little sunburn actually, but I felt the most peace in my body than I've ever felt before. There was a looseness there. There was an allowance there that I don't think I've ever felt before. It was completely just open, completely just full relaxation. And that lasted for the rest of the day into the next day. It was just peace, like a somatic peace, not an energetic spirit peace, but like a peace in my mind. It was a peace in my body that I've never felt before. Yeah. And that was profound.
Wow. Yeah, I'd love to hear, more generally speaking, how life has been since that moment and others that you experienced here.
Yeah. I think that feeling lasted for a good, 2-3 weeks. It wasn't as profoundly, it's like the body started to kind of find its, its little resistances and things like that as time went on. And I needed to implement practices. I started to do a Qigong practice. I started to do more breath work, actually. In recent months, I started an ecstatic dance practice. So more movement-based kind of practices that have helped me to clear out. And, because the reality is that when you empty out like that, you need to continue to do the work and to, it doesn't just stay empty. Yeah. And so for me, it was really consciously looking at how can I continue to release energy somatically? How can I continue to empty out repeatedly? I think this year has been a really transformative year for me. I see it as one giant death that I'm going through in so many ways, and this medicine journey was very much a part of it. There was a recognition in me that I wasn't doing enough or conscious enough of protecting myself, protecting my energy prior to Enfold, prior to the medicine. That became really clear to me during the breath work that we did in the integration. And so when I started doing this private training or personal training with a physical, trainer, we're actually doing boxing. And I started doing that about 2 months ago. And the boxing, and when I'm sparring with my teacher, my coach, I'm realizing, oh my God, I don't defend myself. I leave myself open. It's like the body is showing me the ways in which I actually need to protect my energy or protect myself. The situation with a neighbor, I left myself very open, to be kind of a punching bag. And so I think I'm learning from the medicine, in the integration, what it looks like in my body to feel boundaried, to feel that sense of protection. And really what it comes back down to is just a greater self-love, a greater honoring of this energy that I get to experience in this vessel. It's just being much more aware of the energy that I hold, the frequency that I hold, and honoring and protecting that frequency as you would a young child, as you would a baby, as you would something that you hold so precious. I wasn't doing that. I wasn't really honoring my system. I was taking on too much. I was, burning myself out. I was putting things into my body that I thought were no big deal. And so all of this, and I'm not a perfect human being by any means. It's still a dance. I'm still learning, And I still have my urges, you know, to go party with my friends and rage out and like,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes drink and sometimes, you know, but I still have those urges too, because it's a part of my human experience. So I don't shame myself for that, but also I'm recognizing like these things that like every time I sort of become unconscious about what it is that I am putting in my body or how I'm treating my body, it's a reminder in the after effects, the consequences. It's a reminder like, okay, this is what happens when you're not discerning about protecting your energy, you know? So that's what this whole year has been, sort of this like learning how to embody that consciousness within me, learning how to actually like consciously decide how many clients I want to take on, how much work I want to do, how much play I allow myself, how much rest I allow myself, what foods I put into my body that make me feel good, listening even closer to what my body's telling me. And so I think starting from where the medicine journey, you know, has taken me, I've been really learning what it looks like, what it feels like to actually embody that love for myself, through listening, through honoring, through not worrying so much about disappointing others, but really making the choices that can help me as my infinite essential self, you know, my higher self, or as somebody who can be of greatest service, you know, also to the collective.
Yeah. I'm curious, given, you know, your work in the realms of death and grief, and, you know, that's, as you touched on, like, these are common themes and experiences that people have with this medicine. I'm curious if you're aware of any ways in which your perspectives on those things or work in that space has been impacted by what you experienced with 5-MeO.
I very much feel like, you know, I don't think I coined this, but I really feel like 5-MeO is the death medicine. It really helps us to, I think it really at least in my experience, it really reminds you of how precious this gift is to be in this body, and to not squander this opportunity to be here, you know, with things that are kind of inconsequential. And really in my work with people, you know, this idea of death and grief, suppressing the grief, feeling like we are not, that somehow silence is strength. I think that's one of the biggest beliefs that I feel called to support people in cracking through, that it's actually in the vulnerability, in the tears, in the expression of grief, in the anger, in the, you know, whatever that looks like, allowing that to come through, that allows us to fully live, to fully, you know, because all of those emotions are just, it's just life being expressed through us. It's just life force. It's making me realize that death really is not at all the end. You know, it is probably the biggest threshold that we get to walk through, the physical death of this life. But I think this medicine has really shown me what it feels like to be energy, to be spirit, to be part of the cosmos. And you know, my work with death and grief, like everything is as it needs to be in this moment. And so whatever it is that you're experiencing, whatever emotions are coming through, to just allow. Like I find myself saying, just allow, just allow, just allow to myself constantly. And I find myself saying that to the people I get a chance to work with as well. So much of it is just like allowing life to move through you. Which I feel is a new perspective on death work that I don't know if I quite had before this journey.
Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned the word allowing, because it's, you know, speaking of synchronicities, it's something that has sort of been coming through in, you know, just my own life, where there is a sense of agency, as if, you know, I am going to consciously allow whatever is happening to occur, and trusting that it's all good and it's all okay and I am safe. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. But, you know, I'd love to hear if you have anything to share or offer to those who might be listening, who are considering, you know, an experience with 5-MeO, and, you know, potentially with us at Enfold, if there's anything that you can offer those people, yeah, who are in that position.
Yeah. I'm a big believer that the medicine calls you when you need to be with the medicine. And so I feel like what I want to say is pay attention and listen. I feel like in each of these journeys, and this really goes for any medicine, but what I'm finding with my 5 experience is I keep on coming back to the wisdom that 5 was able to express through me, this embodied expression of truth. And I feel like I've been continuing to just ask 5 to show me, what it feels like to allow. I've been continuing to try to remember that feeling. And it's not a knowing from my brain. It's like a feeling that I'm returning to. And so for me, what's been really helpful is returning over and over again to that Juliana Barwick song and playing that and remembering what it feels like to allow, to feel that sense of neutrality, like life is just happening through us, and the music has been such a powerful integration tool to bring that frequency through again, especially as life happens and you kind of forget and you get caught up in whatever it is that you're concerned about or fearful of. Just consciously returning through music or through these moments of being able to re-embody that, I guess, I think people come into these spaces thinking like, this is going to solve all my problems and, I'm going to be a new person and done and, whatever that looks like. The seeking of perfection, the seeking of doneness, and it just is not the way healing works, and it's not the way life works. There's always more to uncover, more to step into, more to realize, more consciousness to embody. And so, yeah, I think if you're stepping in hoping that this is your silver bullet, I fear that you may be really disappointed. And I find in all medicine work that it's in the integration, it's the after that you really start to shift through these very, very micro, minute kind of decisions that you implement into your life.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's so essential and imperative that people keep that in mind. This is the medicine is one part of a holistic journey that begins, with the preparation. Of course, what we do on site here in the intensive is, tremendously can be powerful and transformative, but where the rubber really hits the road for almost everyone, if not everyone, is in that integration period, quote unquote, that, maybe never ends. We just maybe get better at it or keep learning and that it changes. But appreciate you saying that because, yeah, a lot of this too is about expectation management. And frankly, as a facilitator, our ears perk up when we sense this kind of desperation or kind of sense that this will be a magic bullet. This, could very well be one of the most important experiences of a person's life, but it doesn't end here, on the intensive. And we have to continue doing the work like it sounds like you've been doing. And I really appreciate you sharing how things have been and what it was like. And it's just been such a pleasure to reconnect with you again, Ellen. And Yeah.
Can I just say one more little thing?
Please do. Yeah.
Especially as what you're saying too. What I also want to say is that these journeys are cumulative. So it's not that you haven't been doing anything or haven't been receiving anything that you need prior to this journey. I also find that, just as much emphasis as this journey being the thing that fixes you or quote unquote fixes you, it's not. The work that you've been doing even prior to this, even before you were conscious that this medicine, existed, everything is cumulative. And so I think you always get you receive the experience that you need in that moment, and you take that experience onward as you integrate and move on to another experience. So it's all, this journey is never ending, and it didn't start by any means from just the moment where you decided that you wanted to embark on this journey. It started years before that, and so you're constantly being prepared. But yeah, that's all I wanted to add to that.
Yeah, fantastic and beautifully said. Yeah. Well, thanks again, Ellen, for joining me here. It was a real pleasure to have you as my first podcast guest and made it really easy for me. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
It's such
Yeah.
a pleasure. I'm so grateful to be talking about this. And again, this felt like a integration session for me too. So I really appreciate that.
Happy to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah.